David, you mentioned before, you mentioned Peter Knight, and I know he's a very close friend and peer, and you worked well with him over the
We
years.
have the same birthday.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's going to cost me then on the day, isn't it? Well, great.
Yeah.
Just talk to me though about. Well, you can talk about obviously Peter, but who are the people in the industry that you respect most, either in the past or past, present, or?
I think the respect comes from where you are in your life at that time. It's a bit like asking somebody for their favorite book,
Yeah,
or books. So I remember reading How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie when I was starting out at 18 years of age. So it was hugely influential. When I reread it again at 45, it just reminded me of certain things I'd forgotten, but it certainly wasn't as influential there. I think people who I've respected as I've gone along have been individual mentors. Like I got into a state agency because of a guy called Reggie Shaw, who had a business called Druce & Co., who was friends with my parents. I come from a very modest background, and I just look at him, and he seemed to be the kind of person that I'd want to try and emulate.
Yeah.
So he was hugely powerful. I think that in the industry today, I think I just admire anyone who questions things. And the more you question,
status quo.
Yeah, the more you question, and I think it can be individuals on their way up who are just motivated, but motivated in a good, solid way. They want to get the right balance, and there's certain agencies which are run perfectly. There's certain one-off agencies that you'd never have heard of where the individual who owns it is so engaged with their team.
Yeah.
And of course there's Simon Whale.
Yes,
you can't diss Simon Whale.
Of course you don't. Just to point out, I don't make everybody say that on it. But...
No, I know. It's,
and who do you
look at you? Look at you. You had a great time at Repeat.
I certainly did.
You started a business. Actually, this is really good. That questions.
Yeah.
Your business is about questioning. Are you getting the right suppliers? Are you getting the right training? Are you getting this? How can we do it differently?
I think for me, at the moment, most people will burst out laughing, but actually, because I talk all the time, but I think actually the skill I learned in terms of actually listening to people, when I actually had the empathy to understand and be having the opportunity at Repeat to talk to businesses like you, if you can't take on board some of that that pixie dust, you're just selling yourself short. And I think it's really powerful, isn't it, to be able to just ask those simple questions and actually. As long as you can surround yourself, and this is the key, and I learned this from you as much as anybody, surrounding yourself and focusing on those people, getting better people around you, has always been one of the core strengths, if ever there is one.
Yeah. Looking at where you're really weak, I suppose come back to what we were discussing earlier about being self-aware.
Yeah.
Looking at where you're really weak and having people in that role who are really strong.
Yeah, that's spot on. Who do you wish that you had the opportunity to work with closely and never did?
I'd like to work, I think, with John Hunt for a while.
Okay.
I've never met him.
Yeah.
And there'd be certain characteristics of him early. I ended up learning at the end of my time that the processes and the systems have to be the strongest part of your business.
Yeah.
Even stronger than the people. The process, like McDonald's, and where they flip the burger after 1.2 minutes of cooking,
Yeah.
that the process of doing that is continuous and continuous. And you look at John Hunt, and he was, I would think, years ahead of me on that. I suppose Peter Rawlings I'm friends with, and Peter learned a lot from him as well.
Yeah.
And in fact, going back to Peter, I remember having a lunch with Peter. I didn't know him that well, and I thought I was a competitor, but he was giving me advice on something. I was asking, what do you think on this? I can still remember it well. And he was giving me his view, and his view was 100% spot on. And his advice was 100% spot on. So again, not looking at everyone as your arch enemy,
yeah,
but actually taking advice from them. So John Hunt, it would have been fun to work with Peter, would have been fun to work Peter Rawlings or Peter Hunt, or Peter Knight.
Yeah.
Dale built up a great business.
Yeah.
And but coming back, it's about the time in your life you're at as to who influences you or you want to spend your time chatting with.
That's really fascinating, and I agree with you on Peter Rawlings, isn't it? I've always loved the the relationship that him and Ed Mead have. Obviously, famously, obviously competitors as Douglas and Good and Marsh and Parsons, but you know, and there's always a wind up in the conversations. But seeing that the way that people like that can still have a close relationship is, again, it throws up more opportunities than it does angst, doesn't it?
Yeah. It really does. And this is the whole thing about agents working together.
Yeah.
And the more it happens, the better. The better it is. You don't have to tell me your
secrets,
huge, great, big secrets.
No.
But there's nothing that you know that somebody else won't be able to tell them.
Okay, cool. Right, okay, let's go into the world of fantasy. So I'm Whaley, the magic genie, and you've got 3 wishes. What would you do to improve the industry?
Number 1 would be regulation.
Okay.
And why estate agents don't have to qualify, or at the very least, why the owners of estate agents don't have to qualify and be held up. If you're an absolute toe rag of a person, there's opportunities in a state agency.
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be. I remember there was a man who had a very nice shop 3 doors down to ours, like one of these little half shops, where he was selling little glass animals. You know, the sort that you, I don't know, you titchy little things, you buy them for your partner at £50 each or whatever. Anyway, I remember walking past there a few days later, and he'd opened up as an estate agent. Okay. Now, he may have been asked in to somebody's home to value it.
Yeah.
And he might have been the most honest person that there is. So, but he might not just have a clue.
Yeah.
And the person believes and trusts him.
And it's just a roll of the dice, isn't it, as to which way they are.
And it's their most expensive and valuable asset.
Yeah.
Is now being handled by a glass animal salesman. So if I could wave that wand, definitely I'd wave that. I would definitely wave the wand of analyzing your time and doing data and analyzing data and looking and having benchmarks all over the place.
So are we talking here, because one of the things that I mentioned that was fairly challenging when we rolled out the software to you, you had some really really clear ideas about reporting and that side of things for the business. What part does kind of reporting play to you? Is it an important feature? What would that mean to you in the business?
I can't begin to tell you the importance that I would place on it above other things. Okay. It's huge. So we'd set out at the start of the year, and we'd say, right, what do we want to turn over in each office this year? And let's just say it was £100.
Yeah.
Right. Our target is £100 because that will give us X% profit. How many sales have we got to do?
Yep.
To do that number of sales, how many have we got to agree? How many appointments do we have to make? How many applicants do we need to register? How many properties do we need on? And get that number of properties on, how many valuations do we need to go on?
Yeah.
So now I've got all of these KPIs lined up in front of me. And if I'm missing the target on the number of appointments that I need to hit in order to get my £100, on a weekly basis, I'm getting that data. I know where I've got to spend my energies the next week.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just sit there blind at my computer. Yeah. Why on earth would I know that I'm lacking on making appointments? And if anyone's watching this and says, oh, because my gut will tell me, then that's stupid of them.
You get loads of false readings from your gut anyway, and I've got a hell of a gut, haven't you? I mean, and that can be very dangerous, can't it, to just believe that. I think gut feel is to reaffirm what you're seeing in terms of the data and the facts themselves.
And the third wish, okay, I know what my third wish would be. So I read a great book called Getting to Yes, all about negotiation from the guys from Harvard. And you can pay to go to Harvard to study on this course. It's a 3-day negotiation course, Simon. It's brilliant.
Oh, wow.
Every industry. And when I was there were like 500 people in the room. And I wanted to ask the guy who was talking a question at the end. I don't remember what the question was. And so this is my third wish of everyone's with me.
Yeah.
Rather than it was just me by myself, because it was such a key moment in my time. And I'm queuing up, and there's a woman in front of me talking to him, and I'm next. And she's talking about someone who works for her. And she's saying, he won't listen. He always knows best. He also always has an answer for everything. He never wants to try anything new. And this Harvard professor turned around to her and said, okay, so he's reached his earning maximum then. And you think, yeah. Why, if you're not willing to listen and try something new, and ask, why on earth would you ever be any better?
Okay, it makes it right. So that we've solved all the issues in the industry there. What would a modern day you say to a fresh-faced, you're just starting off with your whole career ahead of you? What would you say? What advice would you give?
Play the long game.
Okay.
If I look at myself, if I came across a 17-year-old David Pollock today, I'd probably want to smack him in the mouth. He's arrogant, he's lippy, insecure, but he won't admit that.
Insecure and lippy. I like the combination there. I can relate to that.
Yeah, it was a fun. And you know that sort of 1980s, you've got to duck, you've got to dodge, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, get in, do a deal, move, that kind of stupidity of the culture. I'd said play the long game.
Okay.
It's what will pay you. Don't sell your soul. Thankfully, I didn't.
Yeah.
Don't sell your soul and play the long game. And watch out for peculiar Liverpudlian-based salesmen. Definitely that. They'll come at you in different ways.
Yeah, there's a statute of limitations on that claim. You're not allowed any money back on that. What would you say has been your proudest achievement over your career? Do you personally just think, yeah, you know, for me that was it?
I think I've always struggled with something like that, because I always just want to try and do better.
Okay.
So I think the things that perhaps were really good achievements, you kind of think, well, maybe I should have done that better. How could I have done that better? I don't know. Is that really bad that I can't come up with one?
I don't think it is. No, I think it's. I don't think that has to be, does there? Because the other thing is you've obviously had a lot of success. So you know, it would be quite depressing if there was only ever one thing you could put your hat on, isn't there? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And as I said, I think understanding and the self-awareness is a great grounding agent, isn't it?
Yeah. And as I said early on in this, the journey is better than arriving. Don't get me wrong, I'm not an estate agent today.
Yeah.
I'm glad of the decisions that I took and where and I've been fortunate and lucky. But the journey with the people, with the fun, I mean, some of the things that we did that you just couldn't do today. Because I used to hide. Okay, so I used to hide under the desks of certain negotiators. So they'd come in and they'd sit down at their chair and I'd grab their leg. Whoa!
Yeah, you've got a full lawsuit these days, haven't you?
Yeah. Putting people's keys in the freezer. That was another.
Brilliant. It's not quite the code red from A Few Good Men, is it? But it's somewhere it's somewhere like that. Focus their minds. I'll tell you one thing I wanted to pick up on you is I am right in thinking I didn't. Half my life is spent distinguishing whether I've imagined something or it actually happened. You did actually hire James Corden, didn't you, to come in?
Yeah, you can still see it on YouTube.
Oh, I'll post that up then after the end of it. So talk us through how did that happen?
Well, we had weekly office meetings, and James Corden's producer was a friend of mine called Ben Winston.
Okay.
Now producing his show in America. And Ben and I were involved in a football tournament together. And James Corden for effectively for charitable donation, nothing for him personally. So it's good as absolutely lovely. Came in and took over the office meeting in his Smithy character.
Yeah, it's great.
Which, if you look up Smithy Visits Green and Co, it was still there, and that was fun.
It was great. I just, first of all, have the get up and go. And then, but as well as anything, just the confidence to be able to do that, knowing he could say absolutely anything, is quite liberating.
Yeah, it's yeah, but also that kind of stuff was great for culture.
Yeah, it's a fantastic.
You
And
know,
just to come back on the culture, you actually, it wasn't just you talking the talk, was it? You and I always, one of the things I've always struggled, if I'm honest, you do talk about process a lot, but, and I don't know whether this has to be separate from it, but you know, and then there's culture, which is often felt of as quite a, you know, a sort of intangible thing almost.
yeah,
But you actually almost proceduralized that culture piece with something called the Greenway, didn't you?
yeah.
And you actually detailed how your what that meaning of culture meant to the business itself. Do you want to just talk us through that
Yeah,
what that was about?
okay, so I think firstly the Greenway was the Bible. This is how, this is the process with which we run the business. We often use example of McDonald's and being burger flippers. We flip this burger after 2.3 seconds.
Yeah.
I.e., you go out and you do an appointment, and the process afterwards is this, this, and this, in order to make sure that the customer gets the right journey and you get the biggest chance of doing the deal. And so it's important. So that is what when I talk about the process. Included in that process is things like we took on a charity of the year. Yeah. We would do this, this, and this at least this and this times for the charity.
Yeah. We
would, culturally wise, have staff suggestion meetings the first Monday of each month, whatever it was, which would entail this, this, and this. So you're doing everything you can to bring into play the culture as much as anything else. So staff suggestion meetings could include things for culture.
Yeah, and you know what you said before about the suppliers being partners. Oh, they and I have got it. I should have grabbed it. Absolutely. No, it's fantastic. You, for example, you listed in there your key partners with the business, didn't you? So we were lucky enough that Repeat is our CRM system and XYZ. And but what I love is, and it must have been a result of as you grew the business, you could hand that, and I'm assuming you did do this. I've never actually spoken to you about it, but you could hand that Greenway to somebody, and as you said, that literally was the Bible. There was no gap in terms of expectation, or well, I don't know what is expected of me. It was laid, I was going to say in black and white, but green would be much clearer, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was. It literally had everything in, including what our expectations are.
Yeah, and that's just as important, isn't it? So this is what we're providing with you. This is what we're the tools. This is our beliefs. But what we will need from you, so that there is again no expectation gap.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, the expectation gap, Simon, where people don't know. I always think starting a new job was like changing schools halfway through.
Yeah.
So you're now 14 years of age, you're joining this new school, you don't know who the nice teachers are, the nasty teachers are, you don't know which classes you'll enjoy, which you won't, who's the people you make good friends with, who's the people who are a bit horrible and you should avoid, where do you go for lunch, how do you get around here, do you have to attend PE or whatever else. And starting new jobs like that. So people need to be able to have a buddy and somebody who can help them.
Yeah.
But also to know if you're doing well. Yeah. How do you know if you're doing well if you don't know what doing well actually is?
Yeah. And the problem that can lead to, isn't it, is that people just keep their heads down because they're not really sure. And in this as a business, you don't really want to be keeping your head down, do you? Given it is a people business largely still through and through.
Yeah, very, very much so. And also, if you know what the expectation is, say on the number of appointments to make a week, you know if you've had a good week or not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not make lots of appointments, it's make 10, make 20, make 50, whatever the number is. People need to know.
They do, and actually, can we just loop that round, and I'll come to because I've loved chatting to you as I always do. I could go on for hours, but I'm not sure that would be fair on everyone else. Take it back to that reporting point. How important do you think it is to be able to have benchmarking with reporting? So, you know, because you knew you were a fantastic agent, weren't you, anyway? But did you ever struggle for that kind of element? What does good look like? What should be expected?
Yeah, for quite a long time. Again, read it. I love to read. And a guy called Tom Hopkins, American realtor, I'm going back years and years,
Yeah,
talked about analyzing your time and your measurements and your data. And he's 100% right. You need to know what good actually is. It's a bit like if someone works for you and says, I'm going to review your pay regularly, Simon. Yeah, great. Now, in your mind, that's every 3 months you're getting a pay rise or it's being reviewed. Yeah. In my mind, it's once every 5 years. Yeah. And so we're now, the two of us are now
like that.
Yeah. And we're going to crash into each other because after 6 months, when I haven't come back to you, you're going to think how horrible I am. Yeah. Full of bull. And I'm going to think how pushy and unreasonable you are coming so early. Yeah. So you need to be very clear with your teams as to specific numbers.
And that must be only ever multiplied as well the bigger your organization gets, because you know, as that distance does increase, you can lose that clarity, can't you?
Yeah. So you need processes, systems, and you need numbers. You need the data. And I know there's stuff going on bringing out more data, and any agent who doesn't analyze their data is going to be stuck.
Going to be behind the curve, aren't they? I think it's that point you can quite easily get overwhelmed with data. So it's about making that data become genuinely useful information. That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you can start off very small with it.
Yeah.
You know, to measure things, you can say, right, I'll start off, I'm just going to work out how many appointments do we need to get an offer. That's the only bit I'm going to take. How many appointments do we need? Let me go back, look at the appointment book, look at the log. How many appointments overall to get an offer? Yeah. So fine, I'm just going to start with that. And then I'll see what value I get from that.
And double down on it and look at other areas if that works.
And I'm trying to improve the making appointments by 10%.
That's really, really interesting. Thank you for that. So I always like to leave my interviews on a negative. I simply don't believe this. I don't know why I'm asking you, but what's the one surefire thing to make you lose it? Because you always come across so relaxed, so amiable, so empathetic. Is there an incredible Hulk raging inside you over certain things? What makes you see red or green?
I think you're right. It is very, very infrequently that I'd lose my temper. I think it would have been a series of, you've threatened me. I don't mean physically threatened me, but if you said to me, David, you've got 2 days to accept this, otherwise I'm going to sell it elsewhere. Yeah. Bad example. Right. You don't pay me another £1,000 a year. I'm going to leave and go elsewhere. And you've got 20 minutes to tell me if you want me to stay or not, David. That kind of, then that kind of threat, I do the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's bad for me, not good for me.
Okay.
So I will see red, but maybe a bit of disloyalty.
How much on the disloyalty point do you think there's a challenge for you there, and for people like your good self, where you're training and empowering people to be all they can be? It's always a bit harsh, isn't it? Because then actually, if somebody says, "I'm going to do this for myself," it's like it's quite a hard. It almost works against itself, doesn't it?
To a small degree, and I never minded that, as long as people did it in the right way.
Okay, so it's all about the way that you do it more than the fact that you're seeing.
Yeah, if someone turns around and wants to have a go on their own, and they say to me, I want to have a go on my own, so I'm going to leave. And I didn't normally have a problem with it.
Okay.
If they'd stolen, if somebody'd stolen a database, I'd feel.
Yeah, no, that's a bit of. Hang on, you're not talking about me here. No, we'll leave it there now. Dave, I've absolutely, as I genuinely always have, I used to look forward to our meetings with just absolute enthusiasm. You're one of the people that's affected my career, and I've been lucky enough to, as I said, tick you off as on the list. Thank you so much for taking your time today to talk about it. It's absolutely fascinating to hear it. I was going to say they don't make people like your good self anymore, but I think one of the nice things is you identified it, isn't it? This is an industry that does turn out characters, and you are, you are one of the best. That genuinely, I'd love to just say that anyway.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Cool. Okay, David, thank you very much once more.
All right, Simon, thank you.
Cheers.
See ya. Bye.